For more than 3 decades, the world has mourned the tragic loss of Brandon Lee, Hollywood's rising star, taken far too soon. The son of martial arts legend Bruce Lee, he had a bright, boundless future ahead of him. But one tragic accident on the set of The Crow changed everything. Now, 32 years later, something incredible has happened. His grave had to be opened for maintenance. And what they discovered when the coffin was lifted left everyone in absolute shock. Could this finally bring answers to the mystery surrounding Brandon Lee's death? Or would it raise even darker, more chilling questions? Brandon Lee was welcomed into the world on February 1st, 1965, in Oakland, California, and the world said goodbye on March 31st, 1993, on the set of The Crow. He was only 28. His body rests at Lakeview Cemetery in his hometown of Seattle, side by side with his beloved father, where their eternal bond remains as strong in death as it was in life. Every year, thousands of fans visit that sacred resting place to honor a legacy that fate cut short. But it was this constant flow of visitors that caused something Brandon's mother, Linda Lee Cadwell, could never have expected. After the 30th anniversary of Brandon's death, Linda received a request from the Seattle City Council, a formal authorization to perform maintenance on the grave. According to the city, the ground beneath Brandon's resting place had become unstable, and a mysterious crack had appeared across the stone. Experts speculated someone may have stepped too close to the headstone, disturbing the soil. Others believed it could have been caused by burrowing animals, a minor unnoticed earthquake, or even a structural fault beneath the tomb itself. What puzzled everyone was that Bruce Lee's grave, right beside Brandon's, was perfectly intact. The city wanted answers before the story hit the headlines. The proposal reopened old wounds for Linda. She had buried both her husband and her son within a few short years, never imagining she would outlive either of them. And now, they were asking her to let strangers lift her son from his final resting place, disturb his eternal sleep, and risk the peace he had finally found. Could her heart endure another loss? Or would this request finally break it for good? She wanted to say no, but she also knew the site had to be preserved for the generations of fans who came to pay their respects. So, she said yes. The staff at Lakeview Cemetery spared no effort. A climate-controlled enclosure was built around the grave to create perfect preservation conditions. Special lighting and visibility systems were installed to protect the site and ensure discretion. Only authorized personnel were allowed to enter the area, each one thoroughly briefed on how to handle the remains with the utmost care and respect. Linda provided the team with personal records and details she had kept since her son's passing, information that proved invaluable as the work began. But despite efforts to keep it quiet, news spread fast. Crowds began gathering outside the cemetery. After all, the grave of Brandon Lee, the actor whose shocking on-set death had haunted Hollywood for decades, was about to be opened. When workers finally reached the inside of the tomb, one question spread across Seattle. Had Brandon Lee always known he would die young, just like his father? From his earliest years, Brandon trained under his father's guidance. Bruce taught him discipline, movement, and control, but their connection went far beyond martial arts. When Bruce Lee died suddenly in 1973, he left behind an unshakable legacy and a son who suddenly didn't know who he was anymore. Should Brandon follow the same path, become the next martial arts icon, or honor his father in a different way? As a child, Brandon showed incredible skill, breaking a 1-inch board at the age of 5. But everywhere he went, his father's shadow loomed large. In every dojo, on every movie set, Bruce Lee's image was there. A silent comparison Brandon could never escape. The pressure became unbearable. He drifted away from martial arts, trying to find himself elsewhere, even joining the soccer team for a while. But life wasn't easy for the son of Bruce Lee. Every move he made was scrutinized, every choice compared to his father's. People didn't understand that Brandon didn't want to live as someone's shadow. He wanted to build his own life, to be remembered as himself. But the pull of destiny was stronger than his rebellion. Eventually, he returned to the screen. After earning his GED, he moved to New York to study acting. At the prestigious Lee Strasberg Institute of Theater and Film, he proved himself to be a remarkably talented actor, even beyond what his father had achieved. In 1985, Brandon returned to Los Angeles, ready to take on the industry. He started humbly as a script reader, but fate had bigger plans. Casting director Lynn Stallmaster saw something special in him and offered him a role in Kung Fu, the movie. Ironically, the original Kung Fu series had been written for Bruce Lee years earlier. Was this fate giving Brandon a second chance at his father's legacy? Or was destiny repeating itself? At first, Brandon refused the role. He didn't want to appear in martial arts films. But eventually, under the persuasion of his mentor Jeff Imada, he agreed. It was the start of his career. From Legacy of Rage to Laser Mission, Brandon became known for his raw energy and authenticity. Behind the scenes, he returned to intense martial arts training with Danny Inosanto, recording every movement to perfect his craft, just as his father once had. By the early 1990s, he was ready for something bigger, a role that would define his legacy. That role was The Crow. He poured his soul into it, believing it would be the film that made his name immortal. He was right, but not in the way anyone hoped. What was supposed to be just another scene turned into a nightmare. During a sequence where his character, Eric Draven, was shot by another actor, Brandon was struck in the abdomen, not by a harmless blank, but by a deadly fragment of a real bullet. A makeshift prop round had been carelessly prepared, leaving a piece lodged in the revolver's barrel. When the blank was fired, that fragment was propelled with the same force as a live round. Brandon collapsed instantly. He was rushed to the hospital, but after hours of surgery, he was gone. No criminal charges were filed, but the negligence was undeniable. His mother, Linda, and his fiancée, Eliza Hutton, filed lawsuits against the production companies involved. Eventually, a settlement was reached, but nothing could ease the pain of that night. The Crow was completed using special effects and body doubles. Director Alex Proyas later said, "I believe Brandon would have wanted the film finished and done right." And it was. The film became a cult classic, forever haunted by the tragedy that birthed it. But was it really just an accident? Or something more? A twist of fate? One that Brandon somehow foresaw? When the grave was finally opened 32 years later, that question took on new life. It was a bright spring morning when the workers at Lakeview Cemetery carefully removed the headstone and uncovered the coffin beneath. Everything inside appeared perfectly preserved. The air was still, thick with reverence and memory. Experts examined the ground and confirmed there were no signs of decay or intrusion. The soil was dry, undisturbed. The cause of the crack was likely simple. Someone had stepped on it, or weather had worn it down. But as they prepared to replace the stone, something unexpected caught Linda's eye. Next to the coffin lay small personal items, photographs, letters, tiny keepsakes from friends and colleagues, tokens of love left long ago. Every piece was untouched by time, perfectly preserved. Then came the discovery that would shake everyone present. Among those mementos was a sealed collection of letters, final messages from Brandon's closest friends, written before his funeral. They were perfectly intact, each envelope specially treated to resist decay. Reading them brought both pain and peace. The first letters were filled with grief, but as they went on, they became promises. Pledges to keep his vision alive, to protect his art, to share his message with the world. They weren't just farewells. They were blueprints to keep Brandon's spirit alive. But one letter stood out. It was sealed differently. marked with a symbol of two intertwined dragons. Linda froze. She recognized it instantly. The dragon had been her husband's symbol, Bruce Lee's alter ego, and Brandon had cherished it as a child. Could this letter be from him? When asked if she wanted it opened, she nodded. What they found inside left the entire world speechless. Inside was a handwritten note. A message from Brandon himself, written just days before his death, as if he somehow knew what was coming. In his unmistakable handwriting, it read, "The journey we began together never ends. The limits you see are only illusions of the mind. Be like water. Flow through obstacles, adapt to challenge, and find strength in your formlessness. But above all, remember this. Your true path appears not by following my voice, but by discovering your own. Empty your cup, so that it may be filled with your wisdom." Tears filled Linda's eyes. She had never imagined she would read her son's words again. And to find them hidden inside his own coffin was almost too much to bear. But one haunting thought crossed her mind. Why would Brandon write something like this? Had he known his time was almost over? And who placed the letter there? Did a friend hide it for him? Did he ask them to place it inside before the funeral? Or did he know? As memories flooded back, Linda remembered his words. How he had often joked, almost prophetically, that he would die young, younger than his father. Had Brandon lived his entire life knowing he would never outlive Bruce Lee? Had he carried that burden in silence for 28 years? Linda's heart ached at the thought. Perhaps it was fate, a destiny written long before his birth. Like father, like son, both legends, both gone too soon. Linda could never find peace with that truth. No mother could. But there was one thing she could do. She decided to share Brandon's final message with the world, to remind everyone that he was more than just Bruce Lee's son. He was a kind, passionate, and thoughtful young man who carried a heavy weight with grace. And through his final words, "The journey we began together never ends," she made sure his journey would live on forever in the hearts of his fans. Do you believe this was the true message Brandon Lee wanted the world to hear? Or is there a hidden meaning behind his final words? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay curious.